patriarchy has made inroads in the religious diktats. I have been telling over the forums again and again that in the morning when we were discussing, we talked of Jummah khutbahs, which have to be utilized properly to get rid of the evils of the society. This I had also spoken in the last year's forum when Voice of the Voiceless was spoken. The empirical realities are so very, I can say, astonishing. I today don't want to put the statistics that what is happening to the objectification of Muslim girls, especially in Hyderabad. Hyderabad has become a hub of unsavory activities for the Muslim girls and women, where the dowry has taken its own stand. Now coming to, again quickly, because my director here sitting, Amina, has given very little time, I'm quickly moving to another point of Nikah-nama. We require a tahriq within, and we did that, but our men, ulamas, have not allowed us. When a Muslim marriage itself is a contract, why not allow some inputs there, some condition at the time of marriage itself? Why there is a fear? Why there is a fear on the part of the ulama-e-deen that women should not be allowed this contract? Who are we to go back to the, jahal, daur-e jahal ki taraf, कि bhai you can just marry anybody, you can live at whims and fancy, and then the women are on the roads again, unattended to. Men have forgotten, when we have done the survey from the empirical survey, I'm talking from the department, 90% of women have not received their mahar, where all of them have given dowry. And when we have the cases of khula and talaq, none of the men have paid the maintenance, which is binding on a man after talaq. You are not even capable of paying 3 months and 4 months during iddat that. I say, if my nikah-nama, if I want to add that condition, why there is a fear? Here comes the role of Muslim Personal Law Board, which has to become very strong in its objective and its action. There comes the role of Muslim ulama-e-deen to cleanse the religion, the practitioner, from all the evils. Let us have an idealism. What Islam has preached you, why not practice it? Why allow others to really speak that Muslim women are backward, and then they are the sufferers, that they are the people whom nobody has taken care of in the religion? The reform has to come from within. Now the time has come that ulama-e-deen stand up, the women stand up and fight for the rights which has been given by the religion, not you and me. Why it has been snatched away from us? Why have not been given the rights over property, over the mahar, over my earning, over the maintenance? Everything is mine. My duty has not been given. This one, there's no hardship for women in Islam. Kafalat is given for men. And how many women are really doing kafalat? You have the statistic. And how many men are really whiling away their time at home? You have the statistics. If the time permits, we are ready to give that. You have taken your rights as an easy thing. You have right to marry 4 times. You have right to give talaq. You have right not to give anything. Bind women by the thing. But when it comes to women, only faraiz are shown. From the childhood, we have been socialized into tumhara ye farz hai, ye farz hai, ye farz hai. Whereas men have never been taught about their faraiz. Religion say we are 50%. We just want to take up what is convenient to us. That is very bad. I'm sure that here is the forum. I feel Shamima will take up this issue very seriously, and Lalita Kumara Mangalam madam. I feel that please take this very serious issue as, and then follow up also, because we need to see the way forward from NCW. And one more point. When we talk of Madam Kumara Mangalam, I want to bring to your notice, there is a huge, movement has started in the name of Islamic feminism. So just go through those, their agenda as to what they want and how they want to bring in a proper change. Maybe I want to leave with reinterpretation of Quran. Why the verses have been interpreted in a patriarchal way. Why women's cause and women's rights been hidden under certain layers of, I say that that is not for all women to see. And our women, those who are at home, please go through the tafsir yourself. It is not that somebody else have to teach. Every religion has lots is, gleaned because they have not read themselves. Please read yourself, because there comes, nobody can force upon you the religion. Develop that rights within your, it has to be inbuilt. When you fight, you have to be equipped with the rights what is being taught by the religion, not by others. Sorry for extending my time. Thank you so much. And with a serious note, Shamima, that you are going to take up the cause. Thank you so much.
Distinguished dignitaries, fellow delegates, and my dear friends. Please don't go by the sheaf of papers that I have in my hand. I'm going to stick to the time schedule. I may probably have to run through the slides, but doesn't matter. As long as we are here to share ideas, I think the purpose will be more than served. I'm going to speak on the theme, In Search of a Space, the Indian Muslim Women. Before I say anything, I would like to state my belief. I believe that the Indian woman is as much an Indian as any other Indian, and she's as much a woman as any other woman. Having said that, the major problem that I think that prevents the Indian Muslim women from being a part of mainstream society is this sense of xenophobia, and have intentionally used the two colors, green and black, green being associated with Islam always, and black generally referred to as the color of the burqa that the Indian Muslim woman generally wears. Please be quick to move the slides. The Indian Muslim women needs justice for mainstreaming, and I feel that the portals of justice need to be sensitive to the needs of the Indian Muslim women. There is defamation, there is discrimination, and there is also disparaging comments against her all often. Next slide, please. Way back in 1889, when Cornelia Sorabji became the first Indian woman to study law at Oxford University, coming back to practice in India, she left no stone unturned in her mission to offer legal service to the Parda Nashin. In fact, she went to the extent of requesting that we consider having women lawyers for the Parda observing women. Next slide, please. I'm going to quote something from the National Commission for Women report. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm looking more at the last line here, free us from oppression. The public hearings, as is already stated there, pointed out the universality of the problems of the Muslim women wherever they live. Next slide, please. Poverty, I feel, is a major issue that prevents the Indian Muslim women from mainstreaming. And just as we had the movie Atiti Tum Kab Jaoge, I wonder, poverty, tum kab jaoge, from the Indian scenario. And again, I have quoted again from the National Commission for Women report, which states that Muslim households have the lowest annual income. Given this poverty status of Muslims, it is very difficult for the Indian Muslim woman to come out and join the mainstream. Next slide, please. We look at the first line here, where Devesh Saxena in the journal Academic talks about the marginalized people, and he says, people who are marginalized have relatively little control over their lives and the resources available to them. And this, I think, is also the problem of the Muslim women in India. Next slide, please. The Bharatiya Muslim Mahila Andolan, started in 2007, talks about how one should understand and try to ameliorate the marginalization of the Muslim community and the Muslim women. We have been made to live life on the margins. We are almost hanging from the cliff out there, and it is time we become a part of the society. Next slide, please. This is a major problem that we encounter, especially in the urban cities. The ghettoization that we find everywhere, it might have been the experience of many of us present here. The disinclination of the mainstream society to sell or to rent out property to Muslims inadvertently leads to ghettoization of the Muslim women and prevents them from becoming a part of the mainstream. Next slide, please. Again, quoting from the National Commission for Women report, there are social prejudices against Muslims, and these prejudices have seeped into textbooks in schools, which can be extremely injurious to the overall objectives of national integration. Next slide, please. While the report talks about many serious issues, I'm just trying to point out something very, very basic. Is there an exclusion politics running through our course work? For every Rani Jhansi taught in schools, is Razia Sultana also taught? For every Meena, Radha, Archana that we read about in our language books, is there also a Fatima, Samina, or Rehana? It is about time we bring in cultural inclusiveness in our coursework. Next slide, please. And there is a lot of prejudice in the Indian society, in the mainstream society, and this is extremely ubiquitous. It is present just about everywhere, which relegates a complete section of the society to the background. Next slide, please. This media, I'm quoting from Munjal and Kaushik in a journal, Mainstream, where they talk about how Islam treats women better than many other religious traditions. But then that is not the image that the media presents to us. Next slide, please. A very recent book, Muslims in Indian Cities, Trajectories of Marginalization, 2012 publication in which Jeffrelot and Geyer state that numbering more than 150 million, Muslims constitute the largest minority in India, yet suffer the most politically and socio-economically. Forced to contend with severe and persistent prejudice, India's Muslims are often targets of violence. Next slide, please. Let the whole of the Indian society, the mainstream society, give up this fear, this prejudice of the Muslims. The Muslims are an integral part of India. They're here not to supplant, but to supplement. And it is very important that there is a complementary move toward one another. And this complementary move toward one another will go a long way in nation building and in mainstreaming the Indian Muslim women. Next slide, please. Fatima Mernissi, an African author, states, what she says about women in Africa is equally applicable to women in India. We Muslim women can walk into the modern world with pride, knowing that the quest for dignity, democracy, for full participation in the political and social affairs of our country stems from no imported values, but is a part of a Muslim tradition, as long as we remember that it is Islam that encourages us to be a part of the mainstream society. I think there is nothing that can stop us. Next slide, please. This is very interesting. I wonder if you can look at the date on the banner there. It is 24th February 2013, same day 2 years ago. That is the panelists. The second image is that of the audience. I have my own reservations. The theme anyway is the Indian women. I'm more happy with the audience here. It is a mixed audience. I prefer a dialogue across gender, and I prefer a dialogue across religion when we have anything that needs to be addressed with regard to the women in India or anywhere else. Next slide, please. Professor Ramana Kishore has already talked about this. We move on. I am also against, please move on. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I would definitely prefer that instead of going for the traditional embroidery, tailoring, mehndi, etc., courses that we offer to our women. Next slide, please. Next. The E factor is extremely important, whether it is the E in education, employability, and empowerment, or the E as in the E that all of us talk about, at the click of a mouse or at the tap of a finger. Nothing could be more easy than this if we can lead our women into the world of the computer. The degree granting institution of the world was one that was founded by a Muslim woman. And it is recognized by UNESCO and the Guinness Book of World Records, way back in the 9th century. Next slide, please. And today in the 21st century, how many of us have heard of the first Muslim woman who went into space? Not an Indian though, but yes, a Muslim woman. Next. And India today, we have our own women making inroads. We have Ruveda Salam today. Next slide, please. We have Sara Rizvi. Next slide, please. We have our own young girls in schools who are into martial arts, training, getting all kinds of inputs that will help them to lead their lives in the mainstream society. Next slide, please. And what about our own university? Urdu University has its own share in mainstreaming the Muslim women. Of its mandate, one objective states to provide focus on women education. And the statistics given are culled from the University Diary, from the recent NAC report. We have 18 Muslim women heading at various levels. We have 40 Muslim women with doctorate degrees and have not counted the women scholars. 9 Muslim women with UGC major or minor research projects. 3 Muslim women on the Executive Council, 11 Muslim women on the Academic Council. On an average, we have 1/3 of Muslim women students in the regular mode, and we have almost 50% Muslim women students in the distance mode. And we find equal representation of women on almost all the committees of the university. Next, to sum up, the things that I think we need to do as part of the society is to look into the alleviation of poverty, to promote inclusive policies, to give more access to education, to lead towards e-empowerment, to provide legal awareness, to give more employment opportunities. And within the community, I think there needs to be an awareness of the contribution of Muslim women since the time of the Prophet, so that they're encouraged to come out of their households. And there is also a need for integrated development. Things that we need to give up is the disparaging mindset, exclusive policies, marginalization, xenophobia, mutual intolerance, cultural insecurity, and ghettoization. Next slide, please. While we wait for a new dawn, next slide, please. Let us tell that we don't care what's on your head, we care what's in it. No law will successfully abolish a vice from a society unless it is abolished from the minds of the people. Thank you.
The next speaker has Professor Farida come back. She hasn't. Okay. Dr. Najmus Saher, who's Associate Professor, Department of Education and Training.
ऑडिटोरियम में मौजूद तमाम डिग्नेटरीज ऑफ द डायस एंड ऑन द डायस, माय फ्रेंड्स एंड माय डियर स्टूडेंट्स, अस्सलाम वालेकुम एंड गुड मॉर्निंग। मुझे बहुत खुशी है कि हॉबी कमीशन बराए ख़वातीन हमारी यूनिवर्सिटी में मौजूद हैं और इस ऑडिटोरियम में मौजूद हैं। वहाँ की चेयरपर्सन एंड अदर इम्पॉर्टेंट पर्सनैलिटीज़, तो इनकी मौजूदगी का फ़ायदा उठाते हुए मैं हैदराबाद में, ख़ास तौर पर हैदराबाद में मुस्लिम ख़वातीन या मुस्लिम लड़कियों के साथ जो अहम मसला है उसको मैं आपके सामने पेश करना चाह रही हूँ। माई टाइटल इज़ द लेगेसी ऑफ मुस्लिम गर्ल्स मैरिंग अरब्स एंड द प्रेजेंट ट्रेंड ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैरिजेस। ये बहुत ही अहम सुलगता हुआ हमारी सोसाइटी का मसला है, ख़ास तौर पर हैदराबाद का। जैसा आप सब जानते हैं, जो हैदराबाद से ताल्लुक़ रखते हैं वो बखूबी जानते हैं कि अरबों का हैदराबाद आना और यहाँ की लड़कियों से, मुस्लिम लड़कियों से शादी करना, ये जो परंपरा, ये जो रिवायत रही है, ये 1970 से शुरू हुई थी। शुरू में तो ये था कि, नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज़, ये जब अरब आते थे, ख़ास तौर पर उम्र रसीदा अशख़ास जो आते थे, यहाँ पर शादी करते और साथ अपने लेके जाते, अपनी बीवियों को ले जाते, और इसकी वजह से उनके जो हालात थी, सोशो इकनॉमिक कंडीशंस जो थे उनके बहुत कुछ हद तक, बहुत ख़ानदानों के सुधरे, और इसकी वजह से जो और पेरेंट्स थे, ख़ास तौर पर गरीब तबके के, इनको भी इनकरेजमेंट मिला कि वो अपने बच्चों को अरबों से शादी करें ताकि उनकी भी माली जो परेशानियां हैं, इकोनॉमी है, वो इम्प्रूव हो। और ये भी होता था कि उनको नौकरियां, उनके जो रिश्तेदार हैं उनको नौकरियां भी वहाँ पर का इंतज़ाम भी होने लगा था। लेकिन जब दूसरी तरफ ये भी होने लगा कि कुछ लोग तो ऐसे थे जो अपने बीवियों को ले जाते थे और कुछ ऐसे थे जो यहाँ पर शादी करते और फिर उनको कभी नहीं ली जाती। तो ऐसी लड़कियाँ जो यहाँ पर रह जाती, अबंडन कर दी जाती अपने शौहरों की जानिब से, तो उनका कोई पुरसा निहाल नहीं था। फिर भी ये रिवायत चलती रही और अभी तक चल रही है। लेकिन उसके साथ साथ एक नया जो ट्रेंड डेवलप हुआ है रिसेंटली, बल्कि बोलना चाहिए कि 20 साल से कम से कम ये जो ट्रेंड शुरू हुआ है, क्योंकि मैं जब न्यूज़ देख रही थी इसके जब ट्रेस आउट कर रही थी, एटलीस्ट फ्रॉम 2001 से मुझे रिपोर्ट्स, जो न्यूज़ के रिपोर्ट्स मिले हैं नेट पर, कि वो 2001 से रिपोर्ट्स मिले हैं। तो मतलब ये कि तकरीबन 15-20 साल से तो ये तरीक़ा चला रहा है, एंड वो है कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैरिजेस का। सबसे पहले बता दूं, जो बहुत सारे तो लोग जानते हैं कि इस्लाम में कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैरिज नाम की कोई चीज़ नहीं है। सबसे पहले तो ये क्लियर हो जाना चाहिए कि देयर इज़ नो सच थिंग लाइक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैरिज। कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैरिज का मफहूम ये है कि ए मैरिज फॉर सम स्पेसिफिक पीरियड इज़ अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट। नो डाउट इस्लाम में मैरिज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ही है, बट इट इज़ अ अनलिमिटलेस कॉन्ट्रैक्ट। ये तो दोनों के ऊपर मुनहसर है कि वो कब अपने आप को इस कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में बांधे रखते हैं और कब उससे आज़ाद होते हैं, दोनों पर इक्वली डिपेंडेंट है। लेकिन यहाँ पर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैरिज ये नहीं है, ये है कि इस फॉर ए स्पेसिफिक पीरियड ऑफ टाइम। ये स्पेसिफिक पीरियड ऑफ टाइम 2-3 दिन से लेकर 1 महीना भी हो सकता है, एज़ पर द न्यूज़ वी हैव गॉट सो फार। ये कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैरिज में होता ये है कि जो ख़ास तौर पर अरब फॉरेन नेशनल्स हैं जनरली, लेकिन उसमें भी अरब या गल्फ कंट्री से आने वाले ऐसे अशख़ास जो आते हैं यहाँ पर, लड़कियों से कॉन्ट्रैक्ट पर शादी करते हैं, और ख़ाज़ी साहिबान हैं जो उनकी मदद करते हैं, और उस पर 2 दिन, 4 दिन, 8 दिन, 1 हफ़्ता, 15 दिन साथ रहते हैं, फिर वो वापस चले जाते हैं। उसकी एक और ख़ास बात यह है कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैरिज की, जिस वक्त निकाहनामा साइन किया जाता है उसी वक्त क़ाज़ी साहिबान तलाक़नामा पर भी साइन ले लेते हैं दोनों की। ये इस वजह से शुरू हुआ कि जब ये इस पर काफ़ी बहस होने लगी, आपको याद होगा कि 1991 में अमीना बी केस के बाद इस मसले को, अरबों के हैदराबादी लड़कियों से शादी के मसले को बहुत मीडिया ने उछाला, बहुत इस पर हुई बहस, नेशनल लेवल पर भी हुई, शायद इंटरनेशनल लेवल पर भी इसकी आवाज़ सुनी गई। तो उसके बाद से उन्होंने ख़ास तौर पर गवर्नमेंट ऑफ सऊदी अरेबिया और ओमान ने अपने बाशिंदों के लिए लाजमी करार दिया कि वो शादी से पहले अगर बाहर का जगह करना चाहते हैं अपने मुल्क से बाहर, तो वो प्रियर एप्लीकेशन दें, उसका परमिशन लें, तब कहीं जाकर। और यहाँ पर भी हिंदुस्तान में वक्फ बोर्ड को लिए हिदायत थी कि इस तरह के जब बाशिंदे आते हैं सऊदी अरब और ओमान से, तो वो उनका देख लें कि उनके पास परमिशन है या नहीं, उनकी गवर्नमेंट से इशू क्या हुआ। ये चूँकि मसला थोड़ा सा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड हो गया था, लोग इतनी आसानी से यहाँ पर आके शादी नहीं कर पा रहे थे, तो उन्होंने यहाँ के ख़ाज़ियों को मिलाकर, मुझे बोलने दीजिएगा, आई एम वेरी मच डिस्ट्रेस अबाउट इट, कि यहाँ के हमारे जो क़ाज़ी साहिबान हैं उनके साथ मिलकर उन्होंने एक नया तरीक़ा ढूंढ निकाला मज़हब के नाम पर। और ये जो हमारी पब्लिक है, ख़ासतौर पर जिसको टारगेट बनाया जाता है, जिन ख़ानदानों को, वो कोई ज़्यादा पढ़े लिखे नहीं है, उनको दीन का उतना क्या बोलना चाहिए वसी इल्म नहीं है, इन डेप्थ इल्म नहीं है, और वो भोले भाले जो लोग हैं वो समझते हैं कि जब हाजी साहिबान इस तरह कर रहे हैं तो शायद ये हमारे मज़हब में जायज़ है। चूँकि मज़हब में तो प्रोस्टिट्यूशन नाजायज़ है, लेकिन इसी को प्रोस्टिट्यूशन को एक नया नाम देकर, मज़हब की आड़ में एक नया नाम देकर उन्होंने कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैरिज का एक नया तरीक़ा निकाला है, जिसे बेहिसाब क्या बोलना चाहिए ज़िंदगियाँ बर्बाद हो रही हैं। आई डोंट नो कि जब ये बच्चियाँ जब छोड़ के जाते हैं उनके हस्बैंड्स कुछ दिन साथ रहकर, तो उसके बाद उनकी जो औलाद होती होगी तो उनका क्या होता होगा, और क्या उसके नताइज निकलते होंगे। आई डोंट नो एग्जैक्टली अबाउट इट। ये काफ़ी गंभीर मसला है, इस पर तो एक फ़र्द वाहिद की कोशिश नहीं हो सकती। इसको तो सबको मिलजुल कर, NGOs को, गवर्नमेंट को, कौमी कमीशन को, और भी जितने उलमा हैं, काजी साहिबान हैं, वक्फ बोर्ड है, और हम तमाम को इस इशू को सीरियसली लेना चाहिए, ताकि ये जो वबा है हमारे शहर में जो फैलती जा रही है, और ये भी रिपोर्ट्स, ऑफिशियल रिपोर्ट्स ये हैं कि हर हफ्ता कम से कम 6 ta 7 शादियाँ, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मैरिजेस शहर में हो रही हैं, और ख़ास तौर पर कुछ लोकेलिटीज़ हैं ओल्ड सिटी की, वहाँ पर ये जो धंधा बोलना चाहिए ये बहुत आम होता जा रहा है। मैं आप तमाम की मौजूदगी से रिक्वेस्ट वंस अगेन करती हूँ कि इस जानिब तवज्जो दें, और ये चीज़ पसमानदा मुस्लिम ख़वातीन की मेन स्ट्रीमिंग में भी बहुत कुछ आड़े आ रही है। थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर गिविंग मी द टाइम। थैंक यू वंस अगेन।
Now the next person is Ms. Shabana Kesar.
I'm not here to present the reports of various studies of such a committee or the UNDP or other commissions which have come forward to say that the socio-economic backwardness, reasons behind the socio-economic backwardness of Muslim women. I'm here actually to look into the reasons why, reasons behind the socio-economic backwardness of Muslim women in particular. We know that, as said by Dr. Shahida ma'am, that our religion, Islam, has given many rights to the Muslim women. But though still we see that she is not coming in way forward in the mainstream. What are the reasons actually for that? It may be illiteracy, it may be poverty, and ignorance about the various government policies and programs which have been made for the empowerment of women. But still we see that Muslim women are lagging behind. The main reason I see as my personal insight is that the patriarchal interpretation of Islam may be responsible for the socio-economic backwardness of Muslim women. Though very significant strides have been taken in incorporating the insights of Muslim women's voices in debates and challenges, but we see that the female interpreters of Islam has not been accepted. So I feel that this acceptance need to be realized, that even Muslim women need to be accepted as the interpreters of Quran and Islam. And just to conclude, I would like to say that we need a strengthening of human rights mechanism, and we need to address the root causes which are responsible for the socio-economic backwardness of women, and also to give independency work of Muslim minority commissions also. And a very good understanding of teachings of Quran should be achieved by both men and women, and it should not be left only on ulamas to interpret. And this will create a new religious awareness among the people, and many misconceptions and misinterpretations will be removed. And once this awareness is created, the discrepancy between the theory and practical will be reduced, and Muslim women will walk we can say, to achieve gender equality in true sense. With these words, I like to take my space. Thank you.
So the next speaker is Dr. Aini Hassan, who's member Minority Commission.
मैं सोच रही थी वहाँ बैठे बैठे कि थोड़े से मौका हमको मर्दों को भी देना चाहिए था, क्योंकि हम जब बोल रहे हैं कि दोनों मिलके ही, हमको ये समझना चाहिए कि क्या वाकई में जैसे कि यहाँ ठहर के कई लोगों ने इल्ज़ाम मरने नहीं देते, तो ये क्या सही है? उनको सफाई का मौका देना चाहिए. डू यू एग्री मैम? अच्छा ना, मैं क्योंकि हेल्थ केयर में हूँ, मैं 2 मुद्दों पे साथ बात करूँगी. एक ये कि अगर किसी भी औरत को या किसी भी इंसान को मेन स्ट्रीम में रहना है या कंट्रीब्यूट करना है सोसाइटी को, तो दे हैव टू बी एजुकेटेड एंड हेल्दी. Health, because, why is health a difficult proposal for Muslim women? Because we suffer from 2 things. One, because we are pushed aside, kept indoors, we have various issues of health. And then, like all women, we also have the women's biology. So the biology makes us dependent on anemic. Then we talk about not accepting family planning. So that leads us to various issues of health. So do we address that? Second is education. Should education be the end all and be all of that? Because I know I have PhD students under me. I have doctors under me. They are Muslims. But what I realize is that it is not just the education. It is the fact that they have been marginalized because of their religion and giving them cultural values which may not be just religious but more cultural in the Indian context. Like we heard in a couple of talks earlier, that Muslim men have had the ability to take whatever is best from Islam. So why didn't the women do it? What was stopping them? So we say men. So how long is this conflict going to go on? And I totally agree with Amina Appa that it's time that we take the bull by the horns. We have had enough of debates, enough of things. So who has to change? It's the youth of today. It's both the men and the women. Are we, now, not just the women in this room. We are talking about women outside. And if you see men anywhere else in the world, they have been very clever to pick up every aspect of women as when it becomes economic or becomes important. How many of you see that the topmost chefs are men, the topmost designers are men, the topmost, correct? Everybody is nodding their head, yeah. Who does catering? Men. Who does the cooking? Women. So why is it that we have skills which we have not capitalized on? This is because our education and our skills have been imbibed informally. When a man wants to become a chef, he goes to a school. A woman knows cooking, but she doesn't have the entrepreneurial ability to go to the market. So can we do that, ma'am? Because we were discussing in the morning. We take these skills. We will not put aside the skills of, or undermine the skills of doing Lucknowi kaam or Kashmiri carpet weaving, which women do, or any other traditional art which they already know. But can we give them the empowerment for marketing and so that they can come into the global market? So I feel that for anything to happen, both the men and women have to take this forward, and from the claps of the men here, I assume they'll agree. Correct? Thank you.
Farida Hussain, who's the member, president of the All India Women's Conference.
Assalamu alaikum. We have been talking about mainstreaming of Muslim women. Mainstreaming is nothing but inclusiveness in the growth process of a country. What is inclusiveness and what is growth? Any growth requires that the people should have the liberty to choose what they want to do. They should be able to do what they are capable of and what they think is best for them. But As we have seen, many of the reports have also brought out the fact that Muslims as a community are backward in every aspect of growth. So naturally, we can assume that Muslim women are also backward in most of the aspects of growth. What I'd like to stress here is women, especially Muslim women, should be encouraged to know their worth in the house and outside. They should be able to decide what they want to do, what they want to study, where they want to go, in spite of cultural barriers, in spite of religious restrictions. They should be able to decide for themselves. That is growth. So is it the fact now that Muslim women can decide for themselves? The thing is, as the previous speakers have pointed out, the women don't know their worth. They know cooking, but they don't know how much it is worth outside. They do all the chores in the house, but the monetization of their work is not done. So the dignity, the self-confidence that is coming with the knowledge that they are worth is not there. So any mainstreaming should consider this, and they should give enough space for the women to decide for themselves and do what they want to do. That is very, very important. And mainstreaming can be done at various layers of